Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the chairman of African Association of Accountant Generals, colleague accountant generals, the chief executive officer, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I bring you greetings from Ghana. I'm excited and enthusiastic of hosting next year's conference. There will be a lot to share with regards to home financial management and related matters at the 2025 conference, which Ghana eagerly awaits to host. The durable site attraction will be our rich cultural analyst. See you in 2025. Thank you. Welcome home. Come with me on this happy trip back to the promised land. All will be happy and gay. Come with me on this happy
Welcome to the AAAG, the African Association of Accountants General, a Pan-African platform for collaboration amongst the offices of the Accountants Generals from the 54 member countries to sit together and reason together on how best we can structure PFM to value add.
Today, we are experiencing and witnessing the second annual conference for the association, and it is bringing accountants and professionals in the public financial management sphere from more than 20 countries of Africa, but we also have attracted speakers, experts, and guests that are coming from beyond Africa, that is from America and some from the Europe. And we are predominantly working on promoting accountability, integrity, transparency, and collaboration. These are the key steps that we are making sure that we stronghold and our activities and our initiatives are protecting.
Mkutano wa kuwile wasibu wako haya.
I'm Noshanda Damini. I'm from the Kingdom of Eswatini. Today we learned a lot in terms of how to care on our profession.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from wherever you listening us from, joining us from. We're excited to have you on this conversation, a very key conversation that we need to move forward with, building resilient economies through sustainable financial stewardship. How can sustainability initiatives transform public financial management? A very topical issue where we've lined up key experts in this area. We have Ian Murray from the CIPFA, UK. We will share country experiences from Tanzania as well as South Africa. We'll go into the details in terms of the people that will be speaking to this topic. At this juncture, and with all protocols observed, I can see the Accountant General from Tanzania, Mr. Leonard Nkude, and all other Accountant Generals that are present. Your presence is recognized. Kindly at this juncture, allow me to invite the Chief Executive Officer of the African Association of Accountants General, Mr. Frederick Liaga. Mr. Liaga.
Thank you, Bruce. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining us this afternoon for this month's series of our webinars. Allow me to acknowledge the presence of the AG Tanzania, Mr. Leonard Nkude. We also expect the AG, the Accountant General Mauritius, Mr. Ram Prasad. We expect the chairperson of the association, Madam Mahaset, joining us as well. And all of you, we are glad that you're joining us this afternoon for this important conversation on this topical issue of sustainability. Our colleagues, as governments across the globe and confront rising economic pressures, driven by issues, climate change, and of course, the ever demanding increase for inclusive development and government services. It is clearly, it has become very clear that the subject of sustainability must then be factored in and placed at the heart on any discourse of public sector governance. It is against this backdrop that we at the Secretariat of your great association thought of bringing us together to reason together on this subject matter. As my colleague, the technical director, has indicated, we have a strong team. Mr. Ian Murray, a director at SIPFA UK, is going to lead us in this conversation. Thereafter, we will receive conversations as to what the Tanzanian experience is with matters sustainability. I thank you very much. And of course, we will end up with Madam Lindy Bodevik coming in to give us a South African experience in as far as sustainability reporting is and to what extent they have integrated sustainable thoughts in the government operations down in the southern region. So we are glad and we trust that at the end of these would have shared enough experiences, would have picked a point or two so that if we are from jurisdictions where sustainability reporting has not been embedded, then we take the early opportunity to pick lessons on how to think through the process. At the international level, and from a standard setting point of view, we are aware that the private sector under the International Accounting Standards Board, they have initiated processes to define global reporting standards on sustainability. The International Public Sector Accounting Standards Board has equally gone ahead to initiate a project to develop sustainability reporting standards. And as we are all aware, in the last few months, we had the first exposure draft on climate-related disclosures, exposure draft coming through, which we have then wound up on. Colleagues, it therefore means that the subject of sustainability is a matter that we must bring to bear in all our conversations. And it is for this reason that for this month, we have then felt that let us have a conversation on this. As we get into this session, permit me to bring in the AG Tanzania, Mr. Lawrence Mkude, to welcome you into this session. And I wish as well, even as you go through this very important webinar. I thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Lawrence Mkude.
Good morning, good evening to you all, wherever you are. First, I would like to thank the Secretariat for their tireless efforts to ensure that at least in every month we get a webinar, and this keeps us up to date with the accounting standards and sustainability of volatility last year, just immediately following our local board, that National Board of Accountants and Auditors, to adapt on wholesale basis. That is one international sustainability standard bond one on one, and there's two. So this caters for the parastatals and government agents which are doing business. But again, this is we took it along with the other government ministries and some votes which are not which are service oriented. They do not do business because we are made to understand in terms of standards to the public sector, we are going to have more or less a similar version with small variations. So we have started to take it on board, but the issue is Tanzania ratified since the Kyoto Protocol. Then we came to the Paris COP, the Glasgow, and all subsequent have been signed by the Tanzania. So we have to be hand in hand with whatever pronouncement or standards in force. That being the case, dear members, we formed the technical team comprising of 20 members from different disciplines, which of course we took them to the training on sustainability, carbon, strategic management with the focus on ESG, risk management with the focus of ESG. We got experience from industry practitioners and the forerunners. We have prepared our presentations in terms of the slides, for which my three teams will be presenting shortly, interchangeably. We are going to have a space of one presenter, the second and the third one. Then at the last time, we should come to the wrap up with the conclusion. With this brief remarks, let me invite my colleagues, Ruben, Mashauri, and the other colleague to start presenting the experience of Tanzania regarding the theme and the subject matter of today's webinar. Please, my guys, please take us on board on the Tanzania experience, and at the end of your presentation, we might chip in terms of discussion and the way forward. Okay. Over to you, my colleagues.
Maybe AG, good, AG Tanzania.
Yes.
Sorry, maybe for
yes.
Let's we will slightly change the mode. Kindly allow us first to we'll do the presentation by the speaker from SIPFA, and then Tanzania will come in to share the country experience.
No objection.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, so Tanzanian team, kindly hold. You come in immediately after the presentation from SIPFA. Ian, as you get ready to do your presentation, Ian, you come in to do your presentation. So, ladies and gentlemen, and all participants on this webinar, we have with us Ian, Mr. Ian Murray. Is a director of public financial management at the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, CIFA, which is a UK-based international accountancy membership and standard-setting body. Ian has a combined experience of over 23 years. He spent 11 years as an audit manager at the Audit Commission in the UK. He then moved on to Grant Thornton, where he spent a good 10 years until November 2022, when he joined SIPFA, where he is currently serving as director in charge of public financial management. With that brief, Ian, kindly allow me to bring you on board and do your presentation before we bring in Tanzania.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you for inviting me along to speak with you today. So I'm going to share my slides, and hopefully everyone will be able to see them, and then hopefully share some thoughts that we have and I have here at SIPFA. So I'm hoping that people can see the slides. Someone from the Secretariat just confirm that they're up.
Yes, Ian, we can see the slide.
Thank you, Bruce. So thank you very much for inviting me along today, and I'm hoping what I've got to share with you is interesting and useful. So Bruce has just done a very kind introduction. I want to just quickly explain who SIPFA are for those of you who may not have heard of us. So as Bruce said, we're a professional accounting organisation. We're based in the UK, but we operate globally. And we're the only PAO dedicated to public financial management. So whilst we're a membership body and an educator and we do standard setting, our purpose is really to make sure that public money is spent well for the intended purpose, and basically for the benefit of all. We've got just around 14,000 members. A number of those, and increasingly those, are now members outside of the UK, and we operate in over 80 countries. And these are just some of the partners that we work with in the things that we do. So I wanted to start by standing kind of right back, I think, and just reflecting on some of the sort of meta trends that we're seeing in the world at the moment. And also, I think, just the pace of some of that change. So in no particular order, we're seeing any number of themes emerge during the course of the last decade, and certainly you can see why sustainability is such an important topic against this backdrop. So obviously we have significant issues in terms of a climate emergency. We have the ongoing challenges around sustainable growth and downward global economic trends. We have seen globalization, but we are now seeing some of that start to unwind. Personally, I think the cat is firmly out the bag, and we do need to address these problems and these opportunities as a global economy. So we live in interesting and changeable times, and as a profession, it's absolutely right that we acknowledge these things and we work out how we can play our role in the change that is happening, so that we can make sure that we're doing our bit. And most importantly, to make sure that our profession remains relevant and continues to exist. So I think the challenge that I was set was to think about how sustainability initiatives can transform public financial management. And if you'll allow me, I'm going to just change that slightly on its head, because I actually think we need to ask the question the other way around. I think we need to ask how public financial management can transform sustainability initiatives. How can we use PFM to make sure that we're delivering sustainable development, we're delivering against the goals that as a global community we've set for ourselves? And really, it's an exercise in systems thinking. When we talk about sustainability, I think we do often default to climate. And we often think about the things like the journey to net zero and how we manage and mitigate the impact that we're having on the planet and our environment. But actually, sustainability is a much broader set of considerations of that. And whilst it's not very popular or as popular now to talk about ESG, I think particularly when we think about that from a public finance or public sector setting, thinking about not just environment but also the social and the governance elements are increasingly relevant. At SITFA, we often try to think about sustainability through a lens of people, place, and planet. So not just thinking about environment, and that's not to dismiss that. That's just to make sure that I think we need to see it as in as broad a term as possible. So on the left of this slide, I've got some work that we did a little while ago now, which was about delivering excellence in public finance, and this is our sort of representation of a public financial management system. It's quite a small slide. I will share the slides with the Secretariat afterwards, so people will be able to have a look. And what I wanted to do in the time that we had was just there's a lot to cover there. There's too much to cover there in the time we have available today. But what I wanted to cover was maybe pick out some of those things, some of those elements of the public financial management system, and think about how they can be adapted or used to deliver those sustainable development goals. And as I said, that really is an exercise in systems thinking. And at the core, we need to be really clear about those sort of four guiding principles on the left-hand side of the document. We need to be thinking about how the actions we're taking are in the public interest. We need to be really clear about defining sustainable outcomes. We need to be thinking about how we make the most of the interventions. and clearly we need to think about capacity. I noticed that, or interested that, you know, the Frederick was mentioning earlier on the sort of the developments, particularly in, I think, in the private sector around sustainability reporting. I think one of the things that's really different, and I will touch on a couple of times today, but is really different in a public sector setting or a public finance setting, is that unlike other industries, public management is an exercise in trade-offs. We can't make decisions to disinvest in something because we want to invest in something else. We have to deliver all the needs against all of the needs of our communities as governments and as professionals operating in this space, and that's what makes I think sustainability a fantastic opportunity for us as a public finance profession, and presents some really interesting opportunities. At the outset, though, you've got to be really clear about what it is you're trying to achieve. And I'm going to just start at quite a high level. And I'm going to use a couple of examples. I've deliberately chosen examples that are not from Africa because I know we have colleagues from Tanzania and South Africa later today, and they will be much better at sharing their examples in the continent. And also, I think that, as I've said, sustainability is an issue which we need to grapple as a global community. And whilst the context may be different, many of the challenges and opportunities are very similar, if not exactly the same. So the example I've gone, two examples I've pulled here. This is from some of the research that we've been doing in this space, and what we've been looking at is sort of country plans. So one of the things that that governments can do or need to do is set out you know, their clear plans around bits of this agenda, and there are different ways that governments can then deliver against those plans. So I've chosen New Zealand's emissions reductions plan. I think New Zealand are seen as a bit of a poster child of some of the sustainability agenda. And actually, if you do have an opportunity to have a look at some of the things that are going on in New Zealand, there are some really good examples of interesting reports and interesting approaches. One of the things I really like about the way New Zealand have approached the emissions reduction piece is that, one, it's iterative. So they've broken a journey to 2050 down into well, whether they're manageable chunks, but they're certainly smaller chunks. So they've broken that long-term aspiration down into a set of actions that span periods of 4 to 5 years. So this is the snapshot I've got here is the second version of that plan, which is taking them from next year 2026 through to 2030. As I said, that's the second plan along the way. The other thing that the New Zealand Ministry of Environment do really well is that it's very transparent. So there is a lot of they set the plan, but then they're very good at doing the monitoring, evaluation, and reporting in terms of how they're getting on against that plan. And so I think it's a good example of where a government has set itself a clear set of goals. It's breaking it down into manageable chunks, but also then making sure that it's holding itself to account as it goes through the journey. The example on the right is much closer to my home, at least, which is the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act in Wales. And this is a piece of legislation that places a duty on all public bodies in Wales to think about the impact of their policies and their actions on future generations. So this is an example where a government is using the law to make sure that public bodies are thinking and demonstrating how they're thinking about the longer term impact of its policies and its actions. It's obviously 10 years old this year, and I think it's, having spoken to colleagues in Wales, the impact that it's having, whether it's had impact in terms of outcomes, I think they're not yet really able to fully answer. But what it has done is it's definitely changed the mindset within public bodies in Wales to make sure that they are demonstrably thinking about these things as they make their plans and as they deliver them. So having looked at sort of some countrywide examples, and there are lots of these, and you can disappear. Believe me, you can disappear down any number of rabbit holes looking at these things. And if you do have time, I thoroughly recommend it because it's a very rewarding and an interesting exercise. So having kind of chunked things up to a country level, I also then wanted to think about some more specific examples. So some things which are maybe a bit more tangible, and I'm sure some of these will be familiar to many of you. So I wanted to think about going back to the PFM model that I shared earlier. I wanted to think about some specifics within a couple of those key elements of the PFM model. I'm going to start with strategy and planning because I think everything should start with a strategy and a plan. But I wanted to specifically talk about green budgeting and budget tagging. And I know that budget tagging is a pretty well-established discipline, and I imagine many of you are doing some of that in your countries already. And it's a really important discipline though, because what it can help with is not just clarity about where money is being spent. So not just clarity about how those strategic objectives and those outcomes that you want to deliver, how are you then spending the money to be able to demonstrate that or to try and achieve those outcomes. But it's also a really important starting point to then be able to monitor and evaluate the delivery of those outcomes further down the line. Without wanting to kind of teach you the basics, like all things, there is some pretty self-evident steps. First of all, is identifying those expenditures, determining what bits of expenditure are relevant to the policy objectives that you're trying to target. There's classifying those, so grouping them together based on their impact and their relevance. And then, as I said, monitoring and reporting and tracking. And that all sounds really easy, but we know firsthand that it's often really not. So some of this will be dependent on the quality of the information that you have. Some of this will be dependent on the quality of the information systems that you have. And I know I could give you a very real example for some work we're doing at the moment in England, where we're looking at local government expenditures and how they might result in better health outcomes. And that sounds, that sounded at the outset like it would be, well, it's a worthy piece of work, but we thought it would be a relatively straightforward piece of work until we started to engage with some of the local governments in England, and we realised that all of the ledgers looked differently, everybody counted something differently, and there was no sort of standardised approach to thinking about some of these things. And I think within this, and this is a challenge not just when we talk about budget tagging, there's also I suppose a dilemma in terms of there will be money, if we're thinking about green budgeting, there will be some expenditure which is very easily identifiable. You'll be able to say, well, that's part of this initiative, and that this initiative is about, I don't know, reducing carbon emissions or biodiversity or re-establishing green areas or whatever it might be. But then there will be other bits of expenditure that will either be a disbenefit to those outcomes, or where the correlation isn't quite so clear and it's a slight grey area. So whilst we think there's huge advantages to this as an approach, and it does sound very straightforward, you just line by line go through and decide which of these line items are the things that are going to have impact in terms of your sustainability outcomes. We know firsthand that you can't underestimate the complexity and the and the level of work that will often involve. So I wanted to then move on from the decision making and move on from planning and think about decision making. And I suppose when we talk about using the PFM system, what we're trying to do is make sure that we integrate climate considerations into every part of that system, or we integrate sustainability considerations into every part of that system. And there are two particular areas I wanted to pick out here. The first one is carbon pricing, and I know that that's something that that is happening in parts of Africa, and we think carbon pricing and similar techniques have a really important role to play within the PFM within the PFM system, and that's twofold really. So you can better align economic activity with the cost of the environmental impact, and it will allow governments to think about how they might incentivize or disincentivize behaviors, maybe using things like the fiscal system, tax, those subsidies, those sorts of things. But what it also allows governments and bodies to do is to start thinking how it prices those costs into decision making up front. And one of the challenges we all face with some of the sustainability, or with any decision really, is often the money is quite easy for us to deal with because we can quantify it. We can put pound signs, dollar signs, whatever currency you want to use against those things. But some of those non-financial impacts or non-financial costs or benefits are often harder to price. And so we think things like carbon pricing offer a way through some of that, a standardized approach that will allow people to price in those things up front, and also then, as I said, an opportunity for governments to incentivize or disincentivize certain behaviors. The second one I wanted to touch on was procurement, and we actually think this is probably one of the most significant tools available to public bodies to make a real impact in terms of sustainability. And procurement's important, again, we think for two reasons. Increasingly, through those procurement processes, you can set the outcomes that you want either the project or the supplier to deliver. So and that can include sustainable, outcomes linked to sustainability. So and that doesn't necessarily have to be because you're trying to deliver sustainability outcomes through the procurement. So you could be procuring for other elements of public service provision and start to build in some of these considerations. And certainly in the UK, increasingly, there is an emphasis on public bodies thinking about things like social value and environmental impact as they go through the procurement process. We're in the very early stages of doing some work at the moment with GRI to think about, well, how might some of those. So the challenge then is, how do you create a level playing field, or an environment where some of those considerations can be made on a like for like basis, and where you don't disadvantage smaller suppliers against large corporate suppliers. And so one of the things we're exploring with partners at GRI at the moment is how we might be able to come up with some standard metrics that could be applied by all suppliers and by all bodies when they're going through the process. The second thing, I think, when it comes to procurement, and we may touch on this later, but I wasn't proposing to go into too much into the various rings of carbon emission, but increasingly it's really important that bodies understand their supply chain. They understand what's going on in their supply chain, and they understand the impact of their supply chain on the well, I suppose on the planet, on people, and on places. And if you're not baking that into the procurement up front, it's really then difficult to recover that position further down the line. I have seen a hand come up, but I think we're going to do questions at the end once colleagues from Tanzania and South Africa have had a chance to speak as well. And so just moving us on again. We couldn't talk about sustainability without talking about sustainability reporting and assurance. We did a piece of work. We did a piece of thought leadership. It's about just over a year old now, I think, but that was looking at the sort of the sustainability reporting landscape. And as Fred said earlier, obviously the corporate sector is leading the way, but the public sector is catching up. And I think, as I said earlier, you can't. I'm very lucky I get to talk about these things in various different places around the world, and you cannot move in the profession at the moment for a conversation about sustainability reporting, and quite quickly when you start that conversation, you move to double materiality. Interestingly, I was having a conversation with a colleague this week, so I won't take credit for this, but it really chimed with me. And they basically said that from a public sector perspective, they think the double materiality is just implied anyway. And that really makes sense because the corporate reporting is very much looking at individual entities and thinking about them as the investable proposition. For public sector entities or public, we need to be thinking about not just the impact on the entity, but also the impact that the entity is having on the wider world. And so I think I think that's a really important thing for us to remember and think about in a public sector setting when we're thinking about reporting. And I also think that whilst the standard setting I think there's a lot going on in the standard setting space at the moment, and there are some questions being asked about, well, who are the right people to set some of these? Is it right that accountants set the agenda for sustainability reporting? And I think the answer to that is yes, in part, but we also have to acknowledge that lots of what will go on in sustainability reporting is reporting non-financial information. And so we do need to think about it as a multidisciplinary approach. But accountants have a fundamental, and public finance professionals have a fundamental role to play in that. I think if you think about the millennia of that we have been collecting, processing, controlling, assuring, reporting financial information, and whilst some of the information in sustainability reports we've been doing that for for a number of years now, we don't have that long history that we do with financial information. But what that means is that we have a skill set that means that we understand how to collect data, how to make sure that data is assured, how to make sure that data can be used for reporting, and how to make sure that data can tell a compelling but also accurate story about what's going on. And so increasingly non-financial reporting will be as important as financial reporting when we think about sustainability, and it raises a number of issues. Sorry, I could just see the chat ping away, and one of those actually is about reporting at an entity level versus reporting at a program level, because a number of the programs that will be going on in this space will cut across government, so they may not be they require a kind of a collaborative approach. And so they won't necessarily be confined to just one entity within the PFM system or within a country system. And so we need to think about what that might mean in terms of reporting. And we also then, I think, need to have a very honest conversation about reporting periods. So obviously we have an established pattern that financial information is generally done on an annual basis, but that might not be appropriate for all of the sustainability reporting that we will need to do, and it may be appropriate that we look at longer timescales for some of that reporting. One, because of the burden of collecting and reporting and assuring that information, and two, because some of these things won't move as quickly, and so reporting on an annual basis may not actually be providing useful information, and so we may want to think about whether these things need to be reported across a slightly longer time horizon. I'm just going to move on to the sort of final slide, and then I will hand back. But we've been doing a lot of work at CIPFA, and this is just an example of some of the reporting that we've done. As I said, the one on their public sector reporting time to step it up, that and I am slightly biased, but that's quite a useful report to get a very quick lay of the land on the sustainability reporting agenda. Unfortunately, it's already out of date because the standing setting is moving at a degree of pace. But one of the key things we wanted to convey in that report is that whilst we're waiting for some of this to crystallize, there is actually quite a lot out there already that people can be using. And there is a real risk that if we wait to know exactly what the reporting requirements are, we'll then have to we have to spend the time developing the systems, assuring the systems, building the systems to collect and report that information. And so our view is that it's better for people to make a start now, because if you make the start now, you can hopefully make an adjustment as as things change. We know that financial reporting standards are subject to change. They certainly aren't. They don't stand still, because the world doesn't stand still, and it will be the same with sustainability reporting. And so the sooner we can establish those communities of practice, we can start to think about the systems that we need to create to collect and assure this information, the better will be, a better position will be in the future as some of those things start to crystallize. That was all I had to say, but I think I'm handing back to Bruce, and then we're going to do some Q&A towards the end of the session.
Thank you very much, Ian, for that insightful and informative presentation. I think quite a lot has come out, particularly moving from perception of sustainability reporting defaulting into issues of environmental. But I think you emphasize the need to have a more broader approach, particularly looking through the lens of people and systems. And I think there is a lot that we've learned from there. And also the issue of balancing information and non-financial information as well as financial information, quite a lot. And we'll pick it up in the Q&A to pick up a few lessons from there. But then we move on to the country experience. And I know Mr. Leonard Mukude, the Accountant General from Tanzania, has led the basic foundation and strategic approach that the Office of the Accountant General has taken in Tanzania. Now, to delve into the specifics, country experience, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to invite Mr. Ruben Massa. He's an accountant in the Office of the Accountant General. He has a Master of Science in Finance and also a Chartered Accountant, CPA, with the Institute in Tanzania. He has 18 years experience in accounting and debt management. He has been a member of the government IPSA's core technical team, as well as the sustainability technical team. Mr. Massa and team kindly present the country experience in 15 minutes.
Thank you, Bruce. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Let me share my presentation. Are you able to see it?
Yes, we can see it.
You can see it. Let me put it into presentation mode.
Oh, no, miss, you. Okay, good.
Is it okay?
Put it in presentation mode.
Yes, I've done it. Maybe in a minute, you can be able to see it in presentation mode.
Great. You can go ahead.
Is it okay now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. As introduced, my name is Ruben Massa from Tanzania. I will not go into details on the introduction of myself. Rather, because of the time, I will go straight to what I have to present. In terms of the things which I'm going to talk, we'll see the introduction. We'll see the sustainability in Tanzania perspective, challenges and opportunities. Then we'll go to conclusion. So when we talk about the sustainability, the term sustainability has a long-term history. I think, beyond. Because of the time, I will explain in short that the term sustainability, it is a result of changes which are taking place around the world in terms of climate change, social unrest, and the governance issues. All of these unusual things caused by our own action. Because of time, as I have highlighted, I will not go into history of sustainability, but just to remind you or to give a little as an example for the climate change. You see that last year, around April last year, we all witnessed the unusual heavy rain in Dubai, which impacted economic activities in the country and the rest of the world. That is an example of climate change, which is the result of things which are being done by us. So when we talk about sustainability, it is something which reminds us that we are not the last generation to exist in this world. We expect many generations to come. We need to recognize that as we struggle to enjoy our life with limited resources, the same resources of enjoyment will be needed by the coming requires us not to be selfish. As we plan on how to meet our today's needs, those plans should not compromise the ability of the future generation to meet their needs. So that is sustainability. But when we talk about sustainability now, we mean sustainability in terms of environment, in terms of social, in terms of government. That is ESG. And when we talk about the environment, here we look at the individual activities or companies' activities. How do these affect the environment? Things like deforestation, GHG emissions caused by industries, or we see we are driving diesel cars or petrol cars, which emit a lot. We look at the things like biodiversity, waste management, water management, and energy efficiency. All these are things which we need to take into consideration when we plan our budget, when we plan on some of the issues to implement. We have to look at these issues so that our activities does not impact the environment. And then when we look at the social, we look at how the organization or government, the impact the organization or the government has on the people, culture, their communities. So here we look at things like gender diversity, inclusive human rights, and the supply chain. So in this aspect, we look things like the access to education, access to healthcare, and many things which are in social nature. So when we go to the aspect of governance, we look at it focuses on the pillars of good governance, transparency, accountability, and all other things. But this is the most important aspect, as it ensures sustainability in environmental and the social by formulating sound policies and enactment of laws or regulations which enforce the good sustainability practice. So having looked at the introduction, then we go to the practice or the case studies in Tanzania. So we look at the sustainability in public finance management, and we see that in budgeting practices, we have a lot of interventions which have been done by the government to which align with the sustainability practices. For example, in Tanzania, we have Tanzania Social Action Fund. This is the fund which was established by the government to take care of the special needs groups. And we have, through this intervention, we have various programs which is used to help these peoples with special needs. These are issues like cash transfer, we have public works, we have livelihood support, where people can get money and where people can get something to maintain their life. Not only that, but also we have another intervention. We have a program which is called Empowering Underserved Group through concessional loans, which these local government authorities are required to set like 10% of their own source gross revenue, which will be used to lend to these special groups. So this one will be the loan which has no interest. They will only be required to repay the principal amount. Then we have things like Public Procurement Act, which directs all procuring entities to set aside a certain percentage of annual procurement volume in terms of non-consultants for special groups. So this is the procurement which will be tendered by these special groups only. So you see, it's like something like a graduation from the Social Action Fund. Then when people, when this is special, people well enough with the economy, then they can be able to access the loan, which is free. Then from there, they can be able to participate in these procurement issues, where they can be able to do some of the non-consultants work. In terms of policies, financial policies, which has which responded to environmental, you see that our government each year allocate funds to different public entities which were established to oversee some of the environmental issues. For example, we have this National Environmental Management Council, we have Tanzania Forest Service Agency, we have this National Carbon Monitoring Center, we have National Irrigation Commission, and we have these water supply and sanitation authorities across all the regions. All these entities are there to take care of the environmental issues. And also we have, we always allocate funding for implementation of, we have a strategic development projects which have positive impact on environment. We have like Julius Nyerere hydropower project. We have the electric standard gauge railway. We have built it from Dar es Salaam to, for those who have been in Tanzania, from Dar es Salaam to Dodoma, it's about 541 kilometers, which may carry about 900 passengers per trip. So using this mode of transport, this one can help to reduce the number of buses which have been used to carry all passengers. So we reduce the emission. We have the National Clean Cooking Strategy, which aim to ensure that 80% of Tanzania use clean cooking solution by 2030. Also, we have the 25 in our tax laws. We have like 20. We introduced 20% taxes. That is a dumping fee on imported cars. The aim of this is to discourage people to import the cars which have the old cars. So it's like a dumping fee, it's like a penalties. But contrary to that, we have the program to encourage people to buy a new car. Can you see my slide? Hello?
Yes, we can see your slide.
Can you see it moving?
I think possibly it looks like you may have moved faster than your slides, so possibly just see how you fast track your slides.
Okay, thank you. So
you should be at slide number 6, but I think you moved quite a bit, though we're just seeing the introductory part.
I am in slide number 7. Maybe I should stop sharing and share again.
Okay, just see how you move fast. You are at slide number 5, and you can see where you are. Yeah, so it's showing the slide that you're on is number 6, sustainability in Tanzania perspective.
Environmental responsiveness financial policies.
Yes.
Is that what we are seeing there? Yes, that's where I am. Yes. So I was in point on the tax exemption. This is purposely introduced to encourage for the government employees to buy a new car or almost cars which are almost new, because if we import a car which is less than 10 years already from the date of manufacturing, then you get exemption in terms of import duty and excise duty. But also we have adapted the guideline through National Board of Accountants and Auditors. We have adapted the IFRS S1 and S2 as introduced by my boss, my Accountant General. And also we have a guideline on reporting of sustainability-related risk and opportunities for banks and the financial institution, which was issued by Bank of Tanzania.
Maybe, Ruben, we've got concerns from delegates, from participants, who are indicating that the slide is still showing as slide 1.
Slide 1?
Yes.
How about that one? Maybe I can get a response because I'm in slide number 7 now, I think so.
Yes, you're in slide number 7, though we still get feedback. Okay, I think now we've got feedback. It has moved now.
Okay. So this is part 3 of my presentation, which is trying to show the integration of sustainability criteria in public expenditure management. So we are almost in the end of our 2025 vision. Soon we'll start to implement our 2025-2050, which a lot of sustainability issues are featured in. If you go to this 2025-2050 vision, you see issues like poverty, improving life standard, creating a just and equitable society, environmental protection and resource management are featured there. The aim of this is to ensure the long-term sustainability. But leave alone the vision. If you go down to all our budgeting and the plans, you see that all budget plans and objectives consider environmental protection and the social impact. They have to observe all those issues. And if you go into our strategic planning, we have a specific objective or target in the budget, in the government strategic plan, where all the government entities are required to implement it toward combating corruption. But also, As part of governance, our parliament, the Parliament of Tanzania, established the different parliamentary committees like PAC and LAC to oversee or to monitor
Sorry, Ruben, we've lost you there. Ruben, we lost you there. Ruben, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, we can hear you now. We lost you there. And please just confirm with your slide if they're still moving. We seem to have been stuck.
Me, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, loud and clear now, Ruben. Thanks.
You can hear me, eh?
Yes.
So I was talking of the parliament, the initiative by our parliament, which is part of the governance, which they have established these parliamentary committees like Public Account Committee, this PAC and LAC. The aim is to monitor or to oversee the implementation of the government-approved budget. Then I'll move to technological innovations. In terms of technological innovations, government has ensured that all public funds are mobilized, allocated, and reported through integrated financial management and the information system. For example, we have the GPG, we have the Tausi. These are systems which are used for revenue. But we have Muse. Muse, this is a system which is for government for expenditure management. But also we have HCIMC for human resource management, and we have NEST, which is used for procurement management. But not only that, but we have these e-communications platforms such as e-office, digital signature, e-mikutano, and the government domain, which the aim is to ensure that we move away from the paper usage. We want to reduce the use of paper. We want to reduce the use of paper in the government so that we get away with the issue of emissions. That is all about technological innovation. Then when we go to challenges and opportunities, we have challenges when implementing these issues or these initiatives. We have the limited technical expertise in the public sector. As you can see, my accountant general has indicated to that there is a dedicated team now, which is been getting the capacity so that they can help to implement these issues to the government, other government entities. But that is one of the challenges. Another challenge is resistance to change. As you know, this is new things, new issues. So there is always resistance to change. Another issue is another challenge is the exposure to data privacy and the cyber security risk. Then we have another challenge, which is high investment cost. This is true. To implement these sustainable issues, it needs a huge allocation of funds to implement these sustainable issues. But on the opportunities, you see, because of these limited capacities, then we have a challenge. We have an opportunity to build the capacity to our team, and later on to the government, all other government entities. But also we have to sensitize different stakeholders, because this is a new things. So sensitization is needed for the people to be aware of these sustainability issues. So in terms of this exposure to privacy and the cybersecurity risk, the only opportunity there is to strengthen security system and create awareness to people. And also for high initial cost, the opportunity which is there is to, of course, is to tap on the green financing from development partners. For example, we have one of our projects in Tanzania, Zanzibar, the solar project, which was financed by IDA and the CTF. This is a Clean Technology Fund project. So we can also go into PPP projects in order to get a relief on the high initial cost for sustainability project. So having said that, I will go into conclusion. And in my conclusion, I think the sustainability issues, or the terms, it's not a peripheral concept anymore. As we have seen that currently we have these frameworks like IFRS S1 and S2. This means that we have graduated, or we have shifted from asking ourselves what is sustainability to who is not thinking about sustainability, or who is not doing something towards sustainability. So for Tanzania, we have started, and we think we are going maybe to do it better because we are committed to these sustainability issues. Thank you very much for listening. Asanteni sana. Merci beaucoup. Muito obrigado. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Massa, for that well-elaborate presentation and quite thoughtful ideas that you brought on board. And more importantly, your emphasis that the resources that we're using now should be the same resources that the next generation would be able to use, and we must use them with the mind that our future generation will depend on that. And I think you've highlighted key issues, including how Tanzania has integrated sustainability initiatives into the sphere of public financial management. We'll discuss that as we go into the Q&A, but at this point, we'll learn from South Africa and how they are moving with this journey. To help us understand this topic from South Africa is a person that has a wealth of public financial management. She has sat on the board on the International Public Sector Accounting Standards Board as a member, of which she was a deputy chairperson for 2 years. She has served also on the Local Accounting Standards Board in South Africa, where she was the chairperson of the technical committee. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome Lindy Bodwig, who is the Chief Director, Technical Support Services in the Office of the Accountant General at the South African National Treasury. Lindy, over to you.
Great, thank you very much. I hope you can see my screen. Just give me an indication if you can see.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so thank you very much, and good day to everybody. I hope you're all well. Certainly by us it's a bit cold, so I hope some of you are nice and warm while you listen to the presentations today. What I thought of doing today is kind of give a general approach of what we've been doing and building for a number of years, because implementing S1 to 3 to 17 or whenever it will stop. It does require, processes to be in place, systems to be in place, and people to understand how to navigate these processes. And we've been working on this for quite a number of years. And so we have quite a stable platform, which only requires some tweaking in some of the documentation and some of the planning in adopting some of these international standards or agreements that we sign up to. So that's really what my focus will be for this presentation. So really which I thought was an important start is, when we go and study accounting in a tertiary institution, wherever, the focus really for us accountants has always been the financial statements, just get the balance sheet, income statement, everything to balance and complete. But it's now, as we can see over time, this is evolving quite a bit. It's not just the focus on financial statements anymore. And as Ian said earlier, you've got non-financial information that comes in. So really, there's more to tell the story about a public sector entity or any entity more than just the financial statements. And that requires us as accountants to start thinking broader. And this whole concept of integrated thinking has now come out as a new buzz, I guess, for accountants in their everyday lives. You need to think about, okay, I'm buying this motor vehicle, for example. Did I plan for it? Do I have budget for it? What is the impact of this on the environment now, obviously? How am I going to use it to deliver services? And how am I going to report on it at the end of the day? So it's not just about I've got money and I must spend it. It's really about thinking about the entire transaction through the entire accountability cycle. Sorry, I will move to the next slide. So really, how do we help? How do we tell this complete story? So if you get a presentation from anyone in the Treasury that is required to talk about reporting in the public sector, we look at our accountability cycle, and this is the blue in the middle of the slide. And usually how it starts is you would have your sustainability goals, Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, that we would have signed up to. This will come into a national development plan. For the country. There might be different focus areas. Everyone is focusing on climate, but as mentioned in the Tanzania presentation, there's also other important objectives for a country, for example, inequality, poverty, for example. So many of these different goals will find its way into the National Development Plan for various reasons, and there will be various targets or outcomes that need to be achieved. So the National Development Plan is usually the long-term view, and that gets broken down into a 5-year strategic plan. So that's the strategy at the top, and it's usually aligned with, the political cycle, the administration that comes in. But in the strategy, it's really broken down. Okay, well, what am I going to achieve as a government or as a government institution? What is the outcomes, the impacts, and what are my objectives to getting to that over a 5-year period? Every year within that 5-year period, there's an annual performance plan that has to be prepared. So where you said you're going to do you have a specific deliverable outcome for year 1, you would then have to break that down into specific targets. and say, well, this is what I'm going to do in this financial year. And every entity must also break it down into quarterly, into what are your targets for every quarter. So that's the activities I'm going to do every year, and how do I break those activities into every quarter. Now that there's a plan that the entity has, the budget is then used as a way to, well, you would then align your budget to your annual performance plan. So this is what I want to do. Do I have enough money to do these activities or to achieve my objectives? And then it is a negotiation or a fight to get more money allocated, or it's a matter of rethinking how you're going to achieve your objectives with less. Maybe there's a different way of delivering it. But importantly, the budget must be aligned to the plan. And during the year, there's obviously spending that happens, and monitoring of that spending. And at the end of the financial year, financial statements are prepared. And there's also performance information that has to be prepared annually in the annual report, that then talks to, you know, what were my activities that I planned, how did I meet them, and what did it cost? So that really is our accountability cycle. And as you can see, there's a golden thread throughout that must be telling a comprehensive and cohesive story when the financial statements and annual reports are prepared. What I've shown on the right-hand side is really what guides the preparation of these various documents. So first of all, we have a strategic planning framework that sets out how we must put together our strategic plans, how we have to break it down into our measurable objectives, and how to prepare our annual performance plans. When it comes to the budget, I think most of us are familiar with the GFS, and that gets used by most of us in our countries to classify our budgets. I think some of us are still using the 2003 GFS. We mostly using the 2003 GFS with some concepts from the 2014, but primarily we align to that reporting guideline because it makes reporting to the IMF so much easier. When it comes to financial statements, we do have our own standards of GRAP, but they are based on the IPSASs, so broadly aligned to the international practices. And when it comes to reporting on performance information, the National Treasury issues an annual report guideline that sets out how an entity has to prepare and report on its performance information on an annual basis. So maybe just some, in the next slide, maybe just talking a bit about what are the underlying systems, policies, and processes, some of the highlights, some of the things that we are working towards. So obviously in your strategic plan, you must have clear objectives. We have to define the objective. We have to define how we're going to measure it. What are the different targets that have to be achieved, and what is the data that has to be collected? Because at the end of the day, the auditors do audit this information. So sometimes you go for something easier, obviously, because it's easier to keep track of and to have it audited. But as your systems evolve, it becomes a lot easier to break it down and to be more outcome focused. There's quarterly reporting per target. So each entity has to submit on a quarterly basis how they've achieved these targets. We do have an in-house system, and I'll talk a bit more about that on the next slide, because it's very difficult to keep track of all this information if there isn't a way for you to collect the information or to report on it, and there's no integration of the information. And Tanzania spoke quite well on how they've managed to integrate a lot of their systems. At our stage, some of it is integrated and some is not, and that's something that we're still working on. We also do program budgeting, as mentioned in the previous presentation, and by SIPFA. And that's linked to your government objectives, as well as the COFOG, which is the functional classification, which is in the GFS. So as well as there's quarterly reporting against your strategic objectives and targets, there's also quarterly reporting in terms of how an entity achieves its budget or spends against its budget, and that is monitored as well. What's been quite useful is for a number of years now in the National Treasury, there have been, there's a project to do expenditure reviews. So specifically on specific government projects to see, okay, well, we have this program where we give food to schools, for example, and they say, okay, well, let us have a look at the data over a period of time and see, well, how much has it cost us? How many schools are benefiting? How many children are benefiting from it? And it does lead to them making decisions on perhaps it is too expensive, perhaps we need to inject more money into it, perhaps this project can be done or this initiative can be executed a different way. So it's been quite useful having these expenditure reviews because it helps you focus on a specific objective. Whether it is climate related or not is probably too soon for those. But let's look at the total cost. What have we achieved over a period of time, and whether or not it has lived up to its expectations. What we have done and implemented, and Ian also spoke about it earlier, from 1 April 2025, we have a standard chart of accounts for government departments. So from 1 April, we've actually gone and tagged climate-related expenditure. So we've tagged it at a program and sub-program level. We've also tagged gender-based expenditure because we've also implemented gender-based budgeting. So that's one of those two things have been specifically tagged in our chart of accounts, and we'll start getting data obviously from the start of the financial year, which is 1 April. We have in the past tagged other things specifically around research and development, because that's quite an interesting area to see how much government invests in research and development, because obviously that has an economic impact. And we have also tagged IT-related expenditure just to see the amount of investment government is making and whether or not it's duplicated. So it's quite a useful exercise also to tag specific expenditure items or groups of expenditure items for future decision making. So in the annual report, they have to discuss achievements of objectives, and then they have to go into quite a lot more detail and show, well, these were my objectives, these were my targets. Have I met my targets? I said a certain percentage will be achieved. Has that been achieved or not? And please explain. So that has to be included in each annual report for each entity. What I thought I would also highlight here is that the ASB has issued, our Accounting Standards Board has issued a communication in this financial year, or last year actually, sorry, that gives guidance on how would you consider the impact of climate in your financial statements. So a lot of times, well, a lot of us are focusing on, okay, so we've got these climate programs, we've got these climate targets, we're going to generate non-financial information, and we will report on that either in our annual report or in a separate report. But climate has also got an impact on your financial statements. And I think that also came out in one of the publications of SIPFA. Because you would have to think about, for example, has climate had an impact on the rehabilitation provisions that I'm recognizing? Perhaps it's too much or too little. Maybe I need to reconsider those. Has there been additional erosion that I need to take into account in looking at my projects on my environmental projects and the cleanup of sand dunes or beaches, etc. So there is a lot of that type of thinking and this integrated thinking that needs to come into how we present and measure things in our financial statements. So perhaps our assets are impaired because of weather damage that is unusual or that's climate related. So that type of stuff we need to be mindful of when we prepare our financial statements, and the ASB has issued a communication on that. They've also issued a communication on materiality. It seems to be quite a buzz thing as well, on how you would think about materiality when you're preparing your financial statements and your financial reports. And yes, we've already taken the stance that there isn't a double materiality in the public sector, because we are looking at society as a whole, or your citizens and their needs, and not just an entity focus. So that document is quite useful for preparers of financial statements, and also for preparers of sustainability types reports. We are very fortunate, and I say that with a tongue in cheek, that our auditors express an opinion on the financial statements as well as on the performance information. So they will go and have a look at, what did you promise to do? Did you do it? Show me the proof of it. And then they will also express an opinion on the information presented in the annual report. I think one of the things that's also very important, and that's something we've also started to create an additional awareness, or increase the awareness of the role of the audit committee and internal audit function, because they are also a line of defense when it comes to the governance within an entity specifically. And we are trying to give quite a lot of attention to them and interventions to them to let them understand also this whole integrated approach. You're not supposed to just look at the financial statements. There's more for you to focus on, more for you to consider when you are, during the year as an audit committee member or as an internal auditor. And specifically, there are there's reporting requirements that we have implemented for these individuals at the end of the day. One of the things, and I must say I got very inspired going to the AAAG conference last year, where they were talking about the digitization or public digital infrastructure, the digitization of government. There's so many words that are being used, but looking at some of those initiatives was actually very inspiring and interesting to find out when I came back that government in South Africa is already on that pathway to doing something very similar, and that's between the presidency and the National Treasury, and looking at how we could make government services more accessible to its citizens without having them drive or search or troll through various papers or websites in order to find that out. And what's linked to that is having a digital identity for citizens, a digital wallet for citizens, so you'll be able to pay for things through a digital wallet. So it's actually quite exciting that these type of initiatives seem to be growing on the continent as well. And specifically down south is what we're also looking at. There is a sub-project in the National Treasury where we're saying, okay, but we also need a way for not just the citizens to have an easy way to access services. We also want an easy way for public sector officials to make decisions and to have access to information that is relevant for them when it comes to planning, budgeting, and reporting. A lot of the systems that we have are standalone in some respects. They are owned by different institutions. And so we want to build a single source or single platform where we can consolidate information and at least have that information available to a CFO in one place, so they don't have to have Excel spreadsheets, which we do a lot of. It can be online and analysis, and have some dashboards that can be used by them in making decisions or monitoring expenditure, etc. So we are some ways in developing this online portal. There's a picture of it, and some of the things that we are looking at developing using open source is looking at supplier payments. Government is very good at not paying its suppliers because, I'm running short of budget, so I'm not going to pay the supplier. And a lot of times it's a small business. And we had to implement a rule that you have to pay within 30 days, and it's something that's actively monitored. So we want to build more of a functionality that focuses on who is government paying, how soon is government making good on its commitments, and how is the budget being exhausted through this process. E-tendering is something that is a big focus for us as well. So taking away the manual process, having e-tendering available to institutions. We have a lot of transversal contracts. So where we say, Treasury, for example, will negotiate a contract with MTN for mobile devices for the whole of government. You don't have to procure yourself. You can just use this transversal contract. So there's also a way that we want to streamline it. And I think also linked to what was said earlier, and some of the targets and objectives that a country might have will be, well, let's focus on specific households or specific sectors. So we do have requirements in terms of, if you're going to do construction, there's a certain amount of local content that has to be utilized in it. And so we want to bring that in to have it easier for individuals to see the local content that is required. There's requirements that if you're going out to procure, you have to use small businesses, or you have to use businesses that are owned by previously disadvantaged groups. So those government policies, we want to see them being implemented and monitored through the systems of electronic or e-tendering systems. We've also got a central supplier database where we can see who our suppliers are. There's a lot around beneficial ownership and see who owns them. We also, monitoring to see that government is not selling to itself, or their government employees are not selling to government. And the automation of financial statements and budgeting. Financial statements can be a painful process because it's a lot of information, and we're trying to see how we can automate it as far as possible. So that all you need to do in a finance function is, check it, look at it, make sure everything balances, but the actual capturing and manually typing it in Excel, we want to try and get rid of. Performance monitoring, reporting and evaluation. It's an important aspect of our accountability cycle. There is a system, and we want to try and roll that out on our platform so that all government departments will have access to it, and heads of departments will be able to see within their department whether or not they are meeting their objectives online in real time without having to ask for an Excel spreadsheet to be prepared. And HR monitoring is obviously very important because we want to see who's employed, what diversity groups they come from. Do we have enough teachers? Do we have enough nurses? Do these people actually exist? So there's a lot of tension also on getting HR information dashboards related to that and bringing it into one place so that when you do your budgeting, you're quite well informed in terms of who's on my payroll, what are the types of skill sets I have, do I need to bring consultants in given the shortage of skills that I have within my institution or not. So that will then also be in one central place. So yes, I thought I would just touch on those because I think it is useful for all of us to be talking about these things. And and sharing best practices, obviously. And that is the end of my presentation. I have a short plug at the bottom, and you'll forgive me, Fred and Bruce. We have got a knowledge hub on our standards of GRAP where we have guidance on our standards. Specifically in there, we do have a section on sustainability reporting where we try to add any guidance that we can pick up, any information that the ASB releases. We do have a section on materiality as well that talks about this topic. Yeah, and there's other things around accounting and reporting that might be of useful, and anyone is free to have a look and register there for information. Otherwise, I thank you very much for your time and hand back for the question and answer session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lindy, for sharing the South African story. And indeed, we just need to move away from the mere focus on financial statements, but to have an integrated mind to this approach. And we appreciate your sharing the Knowledge Hub. Hopefully that delegates will be able to visit the website and see what lessons they can pick up from there. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, I think we should have burning questions that we need to follow up on the 3 presentations that we've had. We now open the floor to clarify and seek and ask questions on matters that would enable us to advance the agenda on sustainability reporting. The floor is open for questions. Maybe as the delegates prepare for questions, I just want to have a follow-up on the presentation that was done by Ian. Ian, you mentioned the need for green budget tagging. And I think being a topical issue and the new development areas, this is an area that a lot of our delegates would want to seek clarification on. And I just want you maybe just to give us a clarification in terms of how can the Office of the Accountant General entrench budget tagging in the PFM processes, and what are those pain points? What are the issues that should keep the AGs and their staff awake in order to ensure that this is embedded in their financial reporting processes?
Thanks, Bruce. That's quite a difficult question to answer. So let's start with. So I think I touched on some of this. So some of the pain points. So I think some of the expenditure that. So if we're thinking about. So the exercise is basically saying, well, what are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve, and which bits of our public expenditure do we think are linked to those outcomes? So that's the purpose of the exercise. And I think the challenge is, I think, as we sort of said earlier, you might find that lots of that is not necessarily. Well, I think Lindy's just touched on it a bit. It's the level you have to go to around some of that is the first challenge. So some of that might be quite readily identifiable. Some of that will probably be tucked away in other pockets of expenditure. And I'm trying to think of an example. So for example, at the moment, if I use the piece of work I referred to that we're doing in the UK. If we're looking at what are the determinants of healthy for a healthy population, and one of those things actually might relate to access to housing. But the housing spend isn't the housing spend sits in a different part of government than the health spend, and so it's how do you draw the links between expenditure that might happen in one part of government with an outcome that's being delivered in another part of government. And so I think there are some challenges there that need to be overcome. And actually, accountant generals and their teams are really well placed to deal with some of those things because they do have that overview of that overview of public financial expenditure. I think Lindy probably also touched on one of the other issues, which I think is information systems. So some information systems will have this built in terms of functionality. Having some standardization across different parts of the system really helps, but doesn't always exist. And so I think the main thing probably is probably to try and but like all things, it's probably to have a go at some of these things, but not try to do it all at once. So I think it's great to have big ambition, but sometimes if you've got big ambition, big goals, and you try and do it all at once, what you actually end up doing is achieving very little. And I think it was interesting in what Lindy's just said, that in South Africa it sounds as if there were already some things that were of interest around research and development and technology. So there were maybe some already accepted or established processes, and those have then been repurposed to look at some other policy for other policy outcomes. And so it might be that rather than trying to do it for all your policy outcomes, what you're thinking about is, well, which are the ones that we think are highest priority or are likely to have the most impact, and to start with those first.
Thank you very much, Ian, for that elaborate answer. We now open. We can have questions. Those that wish, you can write them in the chat space, or you can raise your hand and we'll call upon you. Questions from the audience? Maybe as we get to hear from the audience, let me just get back to, okay, we've got Mr. Juma Faume. Is it Madam Juma or Mr. Juma Faume? Kindly go ahead and ask your question. Juma Faume, if you are speaking, we can't hear you. Please unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, my question is no different like yours. I just following the Ian presentation and Lynn presentation. But my question is how to track, how to tag the expenditures. For example, in Tanzania, we've just started like 2 financial years or 3 to track the environment-related expenditures by putting the specific objective in the budgeting process. So, but we can see it is effective. So maybe Linda, and Ian can share what the world practice, how South Africa have been achieved. I think they have just started this April, but how do they do it? How do they do it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before the speakers come in, allow me also to take on Mr. Godfrey Temba. Can you proceed with your question?
A very good afternoon to you. I have 2 questions. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Excellent. I think I have 2 questions. The first one is on materiality and strategic alignment. What guidance does the report provide on determining material sustainable issues and aligning reporting with the National Development Goals or the SDGs? And then the second question is, how can the integration of accrual-based information within the public financial management cycle strengthen performance monitoring and stakeholder reporting in ways that directly support the achievement of SDGs as well? I submit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. AG Sampad from Mauritius, I've seen your hand. You come in the next round. Kindly, speakers respond to that. We can start with Lindy.
So thank you very much. So we have quite a comprehensive chart of accounts, and I think that's where the magic is. Not that our chart of accounts is magic, but I'm saying using your chart of accounts is the answer. We have a multi-dimensional chart of accounts. So we have a segment, for example, that has all your revenue items, expenditure items that you would then capture. But we have also got a segment or a dimension to the chart of accounts that has your programs and sub-programs. So every time you capture a transaction, you have to say, okay, what program or government objective does that align with? And then what expenditure item are you incurring? We have other dimensions such as project. So what project is it associated with, if at all? What region is the spending taking place? So we've broken down, we've got a regional segment that has all the wards in the country, municipal wards, so then you can track the expenditure per ward. And then we also have what we call the fund segment, where you can say, am I using donor fund or budget allocated funds? So every time a transaction is recorded, there's specific elements that have to be captured. So it's not just I'm buying a set of books. It's I'm buying a set of books for what region, I'm buying a set of books for what objective or sub-objective, what budget is being used. Is it donor funding or is it my allocated budget? Is it related to a project? And usually projects is only for like infrastructure type spending, so we can do project costing properly. So capturing a whole string relating to one transaction gives you the data that you need in order to see how am I spending against specific objectives of government. And where we've placed our climate-related tagging is on the objective. So we've said, okay, well, climate has specific objectives, and we are going to tag specific objectives or program structures within our chart of accounts because we've standardized it to a certain level. And that's where we would then be able to pick up the information that departments capture, because they have to capture against a objective, and it would automatically be tagged. So that's kind of how we ensure that we have the information that will help us to do the reporting across the board. And that's what I would recommend countries look at to see how they can utilize their systems to keep track of this information. On materiality, what we have said is that materiality for financial reporting should be similar to materiality for sustainability reporting as well. And we have a whole framework of thinking, who are my users? What information do they want? Will this impact decision making? Yes or no, and if it will impact decision making, then it actually is material. So we're trying to get practitioners to start thinking about the information and the information needs or the information usefulness, and start making decisions around whether or not this information is material or not, rather than just what the auditors say. But it's difficult because it is a whole mindset change. But happy to also share that document with the Secretariat for distribution. Thanks.
Ian?
I don't know that I've got a huge amount to add to what Lindy was saying. And I think the key thing on tagging is it's the starting point. So you're tagging expenditure, and by tagging expenditure, it then allows you to make an assessment down the line about so just tagging expenditure doesn't tell you whether the expenditure has been effective or not, does it? So, but it gives you a chance to make that determination at a later date, because you can then make a proper assessment about cost benefit or cost impact, because you can clearly identify the the costs. And actually, that's the money's always the easy bit in these considerations, identifying the outcomes and demonstrating that the outcomes were delivered because of the money that you spent is a much harder piece. And we're certainly doing a lot of work at the moment looking at performance audit, which is part of the answer to that question. The only thing I'd add on materiality, I think what's different, the bigger risk as I see it when we talk about sustainability is that completeness test. And I think there's actually a question that's just gone in the chat, which is, should we be trying to report against all of the all of the SDGs or all of us? And the answer is no. You need to think about who your stakeholders are and what's going to be important and useful to them. But I think it's a much broader group of stakeholders, and it's a much broader, a broader set of information that you could publish, and so we haven't talked about greenwashing, but there is a real, it's human nature, but there is an obvious temptation for us to want to tell the best possible story when it comes to sustainability, rather than the accurate and fair one, I think.
Thank you very much, Ian and Lindy. I now call upon Mr. Rampasad, the Accountant General from Mauritius. Kindly ask your question, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. Thank you very much for all the participants who are present. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So regarding sustainability and climate change disclosure, these are not easy things that we see, because as Mr. Murray explained, we have the greenwashing issue. Very often people show good reports, good information, but ultimately when you go deep inside those data, you will find that there are certain things that are not in line with what was suggested, as Lindy explained. We start with a plan and then we show what we have achieved. And very often we have that gap and challenges when we report sustainability and climate change issue. You mentioned also about the 17, I don't know, I'm just talking about the 17 SDGs. One of the SDG, which very often we fail to bring on board, is peace, justice, and the strong institution. Very often when we go to a country, the first thing we ask whether we are safe in that country. And then we are just comparing countries like Dubai. When you go there, you are safe. But when you go to like Gulf countries, maybe you're not safe. So here, I think the government should intervene, should come with like policies and measures to put in place so that the country becomes safe in itself. People will enjoy visiting such countries. And I am going to take two examples. In India, there is one airport which is called Kochi Airport, which is 100%, I would say, fully powered by solar energy. And to make that airport to be fully powered by solar energy, just imagine how many solar panels we need. So this is a big challenge. We are talking about, on one side, bring the temperature down by 1 or 2 Celsius. But on the other side, we have a cost implementation. We have that cost constraint, budget constraint, where each and every country face that. And we expect donor countries to invest in such projects. Another thing is that, another example, in my country, Mauritius, government has introduced like a sort of tax-free for those people who are buying electric cars and hybrid cars. So now the question is, what is the cost of an electric car as opposed to a petrol engine car? So a petrol engine car may cost like USD 300,000, and an electric car may cost twice the amount as a petrol engine car. And if people think as an accountant, they will surely buy a petrol engine car as opposed to an electric vehicle car. So the question is, we have to change people's mindset, and it should normally come from the government, means those policy makers and those who decide for the government. In my country, we had recently, the government has changed, and they are making new policies on sustainability, on climate change. I appreciate that. But when we look at the cost of those projects, they are quite enormous, vast, big. So I think we need to make a reflection on the cost and benefit. I agree that we are going to get a lot of benefit. We plant 10 trees as opposed to we cut down 10 trees. What will be the effect? But ultimately, what we are going to get at the end of the day. So this was not a question, it was just sharing of knowledge. I am going to share also, ACCA has introduced paperless, computer-based examination. How many universities in the world have able to adopt that principle? So long time ago, I myself, when I was sitting for examination, so it was paper-based, and we had to provide students a lot of papers. And where do we get those papers? We cut down trees. ACCA has already introduced computer-based. So why don't we, as a country, we take example of others and we just put that in our country as an example to our own benefits? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, AG, for that contribution. Just before I bring in the speakers, allow me to take the question from Mr. Moses Nyoni. Mr. Moses Nyoni, kindly ask your question and be brief.
Thank you very much. Moses Nyoni from Zimbabwe. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Nyoni.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to pose a quick question for presenters from Tanzania and South Africa. I want to ask them the level of digitalization that has happened in the public sector in their respective countries. Like at what percentage are they in terms of digital capturing of transactions, especially the initial capturing?
Okay.
Just in the approximate percentages, please.
Thank you very much. Mr. I don't know whether it's Mr. or Madam Ndewija Mashauri. Kindly ask your question and brief to the point. Ndewija Mashauri.
Yes, Bruce. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
My question is dealing with disposing of these clean energy facilities. For example, these batteries, which are used by electric cars and other solar panels, which are using batteries. So my question is, I can see the danger of disposing these things, because maybe can I get comfort from Ian and the experience from South Africa? What are the plan for these dispose of those batteries and other facilities after end of life? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me allow firstly Mr. Ruben from Tanzania to answer the question that Mr. Nyoni asked. And then Lindy, we can come in, and then Ian.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce, and thank you, Mr. Nyon, for a good question. As I highlighted in my presentation, in Tanzania, everything about public finance management, everything is digitalized. So when you go to, for example, in revenue collection, if you look at the maybe water bill or electricity bill, So what you do is to pay it through we call it control number. So the revenue is collected through GPG system, which people pay through the control number. So even on the expenditure side, everything is done using the system. That's all about Tanzania. So it is in terms of percentage, I can say many transactions are captured through the system.
Okay.
No, yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ruben Massa. Lindy?
Thank you. Let me respond to the capturing of transactions question first. So most of the transactions are captured by somebody on the system. There isn't an automated capturing. So what we want to get to eventually is that a supplier can email an invoice to a central email address, and it will automatically be loaded on the system. That just needs to be verified. But at the moment, it still gets emailed. It has to get verified. People have to send documentation through. So there is some sort of manual intervention there, but everything is captured on a system, and payments are made through the system. I think what forced a lot of change to be more electronic was COVID. So in the past, you would actually have to print out an invoice, put together the supporting documentation, and then go hand it over to our central payment office. We stopped doing that during COVID because we couldn't do that. So a lot of that was then done through a electronic signing system where you could actually put your supporting documentation together as an electronic file that then gets emailed and captured. So there is some manual intervention, but most of it is captured in the system and stored in the system. I don't think there is consistency in the way it is applied. So I think one department through the next might do it differently, but certainly there is some capability there for the digitalization of that process. When it comes to maybe sustainability and the materiality and the application thereof, I think that's probably going to be an area where it's very jurisdictional specific. When it comes to IPSAS accounting standards, developing an international standard that's principle-based that all countries can use, was a lot easier than developing a standard on sustainability reporting, because it does rely on what are the priorities of a country that cannot be determined by a standard setter. And so, first of all, doing this type of reporting according to the standards, if it's S1 to S3 or the IPSAS standards, there has to be a decision either from the political structures or somewhere else that says these are our priorities. And this is what we're going to focus on, and entities would then have to put together plans to follow that. I think as accountant generals, we are also going to have to provide guidance, at least initially. I think the IPSASB will probably do it, but as accountant generals, we would have to give guidance on what do we want reporting entities to focus on. So I think Ian also mentioned that there's policymakers, policy takers. So if you're setting a policy on carbon emissions, who is the one that has to report on that? What entity has to report on the outcomes of it? And should the individual entities report on their own emissions where it might not be as impactful? And I think that's the guidance that from the Accountant General's office, we might need to say, okay, well, let's take this standard, unpack it, and say, this is what we expect you to be thinking about as a reporting entity, at least initially, because I think it will be quite difficult for example, the National Treasury to decide, okay, well, what are we going to report on in terms of sustainability? I mean, we don't really have a product, but what will our focus be? So I think that's the guidance that we are going to have to give to entities, and at least give them what their focus areas should be for now. On the chat was around infrastructure and technology. There's two things that I can advise on. When it comes to technology, and this is something that we have started to do in the past year or so, is to see, let us try and consolidate, especially when it comes to infrastructure. So at the moment, we're working across our Home Affairs, the Reserve Bank, and ourselves, and one or two other departments, to say, okay, in terms of this whole digitization, let's see how we can consolidate and share infrastructure rather than everybody investing specifically. And I think that's very important, because technology spending can rack up very quickly. So it's a matter of saying, okay, how best can we consolidate this type of spending and share the platforms, the data centers, etc., with different departments. And I think this also touches on the one on infrastructure. We have an infrastructure fund that was established where there's like a blended finance arrangement, where we've said, for infrastructure projects, we're going to get the private sector also to make an investment in it. So kind of get private sector involvement, so that government will put money in, but will share the cost of it. And often the private sector has a better way of managing and delivering on such projects. So it's kind of then looking at a way of having public-private sector partnerships, which Tanzania also mentioned, to help with the, government not spending excessively. Let's see how we can get public sector investment also in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindy. Ian, briefly.
Again, Lindy's given a very comprehensive answer. I think I completely agree with what Lindy is saying around not trying to boil the ocean with some of the sustainability reporting. And I think much in the way that when you're making any change, trying to do all of that change at once just sounds like a real recipe for disaster to me. I just want to pick up on the accruals accounting point, because I think that's actually, I think we could see this as the sustainability thing as we could create a lot of uncertainty or almost a bit of kind of trepidation about it. So actually the transition to accruals supports a lot of what we've been talking about today, because what accruals accounting is trying to get people to do is take a long-term view on a transaction or a financial arrangement and look at that impact over a number of years. And that's what sustainability reporting is trying to do as well. The only thing I would add, I think, on the sort of the transition, I really don't think that sustainability necessarily needs to be reported on an annual, like not all of it on an annual basis. And I know from the work that's gone on here with Treasury in the UK, one of the other things that they've looked to do is they've looked at how they can support the process by. So we've started with TCFD, so looking at the Task Force for Climate Change disclosures, and they've standardized some of the assumptions across government. So they've basically said, if you have to take a 100-year view on something, use these assumptions. If you've got to take a 50-year view on something, use these assumptions. If it's a bit nearer in terms of a time horizon, actually you can use local assumptions. So I think there are ways that governments can support practitioners to cut through some of that complexity by just adopting some standardized approaches.
Thank you very much, Ian. And I know there could be a couple of burning questions. I know we've almost at the tail end of our time. Allow me just to bring in two. The hands have been outstanding for quite some time. And I will ask them to be very brief. Abdi Ali Hassan, kindly ask your question. The next question I'll take is Raphael Muchuma. Briefly and straight to the point before we close. Abdi Ali Hassan. Mr. Abdi Ali Hassan, if you are talking, we can't hear you. You're on mute. Okay. Let me move on to Mr. Raphael Muchuma. Mr. Raphael Muchuma. Okay, it appears we have the technical glitch there. At this point, I think we can allow me to bring in the Chief Executive Officer of Triple AG to give the final remarks before we call it a day.
Thank you, Bruce. And mine is purely to pass a vote of thanks. But before doing that, I'm struggling to extract what are my top 5 key messages from this webinar. I know there have been a ton of messages that one would take out of the webinar today, given the significance of the matter that we were handling. But my top 4 is, I would start by saying that sustainability isn't an option in modern governance. Governments must integrate sustainability and sustainable practices within their governance systems. A green procurement is a fiscal and environmental win. So if you're to ever position yourself, position your organization, position your government as a government of the future, green procurement, and we learned of how best we can then track these through our reporting systems. The third point that I take home is capacity building unlocks sustainability as an emerging area. We must think capacity building. We must create, and then this leads to my fourth point of country peer learning, which accelerates progress. So when you link the third point on capacity building, which unlocks sustainability and sustainable practices, together with country peer learning, which accelerates progress in the onboarding of these sustainability reporting, we are then saying that public finance would then be at the front line for climate action. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon for this very informative session. Permit me just to acknowledge and appreciate Ian Murray, the director at CIPFA, C.A. Lindy Bodevic, Director in the Accountants General Office, South Africa, and Mr. Ruben Massa from the Office of the Accountant General of Tanzania for leading our discussions today. I also wish to acknowledge that by the sheer significance of the topic today, we had 4 accountants generals attending today. The AG Botswana, Mr. Malelo Watladi, was in. We want to thank you for coming through. AG Mauritius, Mr. Rampasad was also in, and of course, AG Tanzania, who joined the AG Kingdom of Eswatini, the Madam Chair for the association. Ladies and gentlemen, as we go out, I had Ian mention dual materiality. Let us focus on impact in as well as impact out of our government offices. We thank you, and we look forward to you joining us again at our next round of the webinars, which happens on 5th of June. So mark your diaries. On 5th of June, we will have our next round of the webinar, which will tackle the big topic on how do we cost the African assets and create monetarized value around them so that we then are able to extract a commensurate value out of our assets. Thank you very much, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning from wherever you joined us.